I call this meeting to order at 5:02 p.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Swarthout. Trustee Prager.
Here.
Supervisor Urso.
Here.
Trustee Parnell. Here. Trustee Oliver Sutherland.
Here.
Would you like me to refer to you as?
Whichever's easier
Okay.
for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds good. And then, I ask you all to rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment. This is the portion of the meeting where anyone in the audience who wishes to address the board may do so. We ask, that you will come forward, state your name, spelling of your last name, and record, just for the record, to provide your address. We also ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, because the state law limits the board to consideration of the matters listed on the published agenda. We ask that you please do not take offense if we do not respond to matters. You may rise in the public comment. With that being said, Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up for public comment?
Yes, there are two people. First, we have Janice Schnellrich.
And my name's spelled right there, right?
Yes. Did I spell it wrong at some
No,
point?
she's saying we have to spell it, so you
Oh,
know.
really?
No, we
Yeah,
have
got
it.
it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, just making sure.
During public comment at the April meeting, Camilla Ursel read a statement promising to videotape meeting and post online. Last month, the meeting was videotaped. We have yet to see it posted online. Lack of transparency in government leads to lack of public trust. Illinois legislation enacted the FOIA Freedom of Information Act on July 1st, 1984. The law was established to provide the public with access to information about state and local government and to enhance transparency and public awareness of government decision-making. I have attended Shields Township meeting, and ST I'm going to use from now on, monthly meetings since fall 1996. Initially, they were held in a Lake Forest commercial building and recorded on audio tape for transaction. When I asked questions, I faced verbal abuse and sought legal advice. I was told I could obtain the meeting recordings for my records via FOIA. When I FOIA'd, I was publicly harassed for doing so by the ST supervisor, who would often hold a fistful of FOIA documents in his raised hand, while citing the request had cost the township big bucks. He was very dramatic. Harassment has persisted for the past 25 years. 7 supervisors, along with trustees and employees, accused me of causing high financial costs to the township due to FOIA requests for records not publicly available as required by law. No other government agency within Shields Township has a reputation of shaming the public for requesting information via FOIA. Illinois law requires government units to have a trained FOIA officer by law. The role is assigned to the deputy clerk, who is paid for handling FOIA requests. So why has Shields Township management decided the deputy clerk cannot manage these duties? Last fiscal year, ST received $10,000 in bills for legal fees to analyze, assess strategy, exchange email, or telephone conference in response to FOIA requests. The decision's justification is unclear, and it warrants an explanation from both past and current management. The public should not be unjustly blamed for issues stemming from ST's poor management of FOIA requests.
Next, we have Kathy Blumenbach.
On November December 25th, the township clerk received objections challenging nomination papers for myself and 4 other candidates for the April 1st election. The objections were filed by the township employee Dan Rogers. The Township Electoral Board conducts electoral hearings under the responsibility of the clerk, who is allowed legal counsel to assure that law is followed. Rule of procedure on how to conduct a fair and impartial hearing was drafted by the Township Attorney and approved by the Electoral Board prior to the December 9th hearing. 2 of 5 candidates did not contest. The main objection for the other candidates claimed nomination petitions did not comply with election code because the section for address, quote, zip code failed to include the city, village of residence. The candidates argued the address and zip code for each candidate provided only one residential location and therefore met substantial compliance to the law. The rules of procedure delegate the authority of the township attorney to conduct the hearings. Prior to December 19th hearing, it became clear that the township attorneys were not enforcing the rules. Rogers' attorney was not required to follow rules for document filings. They did not have dates or signatures and were not filed in the clerk's office as required by rules. The township attorney allowed arguments of evidence unrelated to issues cited in the objection. Then 2 days before the December 19th hearing, the township attorney delayed the hearing until January 9th, requiring supplemental briefs, added 9 new legal cases, and allowed Rogers' attorney to subpoena witnesses, all without participation or authorization of the electoral board as required by the rules. The rules clearly prohibited the electoral board from delegating authority to make the final finding or issue a final decision. Yet the township attorney prepared 90 pages worth of findings, which took 2 hours to present at the January 13th hearing. The board decision were previously drafted and signed at the hearing. The findings contained 16 new court cases not previously presented to the board. The electoral board hearings totaled 5.5 hours over 3 days. The circuit court hearing on February 14th was less than 30 minutes. Legal invoices for the proceeding totaled $95,000, of which $84,000 were attorney fees. It appears that denying citizens of Shields Township a choice in the last election was very lucrative for the township attorneys. The township attorneys' actions contributed to the costly proceedings and were far from impartial. There are $81,000 of outstanding legal invoices yet to be approved. It may be a good time to carefully review legal invoices, contracts, and payment policies drafted by the attorney prior to reappointment. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to comment?
Alright. Hearing and seeing none, I will now close the portion of the meeting. The next item on the agenda is the reports. So first is the supervisor's report. I want to update everyone on progress during our first month. Since assuming office, I have been present at the township every day, working closely with the administrator and the staff to familiarize myself on internal systems, budgeting, and procedures. Our financial audit is on track and is scheduled to approve in August. We expect a draft report for trustees to approve next month. I've had many calls and meetings with community leaders and other township supervisors and have many more on the schedule. I have spoken to Mike Dunn, and our first roads committee should be next week, and we will post the agenda hopefully Monday. In their first meeting, they will be discussing what road or roads that need to be addressed first. Additionally, water mitigation with our ditches and any other speed humps that need to be addressed prior to the end of summer. I am focused on figuring out a way to have a crossing guard so our children can cross safely at 176 near Target in time for school. I will be in contact with the village of Lake Bluff and District 65 to work together to make this a reality. Last month, our board wanted additional time to review legal. I expect that our board passes my appointment of Erdo Where was as legal representation of Shields this evening. Erdo Werwas has the experience in our township to protect us moving forward. We recorded last meeting and we are working on the most efficient way so residents can't attend the meeting or able to watch. We will continue to work on our goal, and we currently have YouTube channel, but it will continue to improve. All you have to go is go to youtube.com and put in Shields Township, and all the meetings are there. They're just not linked on the website yet. We're working through all of that. I have applied for passport service to resume at the township. However, at this time, State Department is not accepting new facilities. As you all know, I have an open door policy with all our trustees to come meet with our staff and see our operations. So I want all of you to feel welcome and schedule time with me to come in. And we're also doing the training and education. I did the newly elected officials seminar, which was sponsored by the Senate Majority Leader with Laura Murphy and hosted by a law firm, and like over 50 participants were there. And then May 16th, I also did the Illinois Township Attorneys Association Annual Education Seminar. And then the upcoming one is the Metropolitan Township Association Training, June 21st, which Catherine's gonna join us in. And then finally, I want to thank all of you for participating in township meetings, and this is our community, and we want to make sure that we work collectively as a community. And then, the roads committee. I want to deliver this to month's road chair report, and we have our new truck, which replaced our 20-plus-year-old truck as part of our fleet. Our new truck will last for years to come. It also provides safety features that our roads teams deserve to make sure they go home to their families every single night. Our new speed humps have been striped and are working as expected to mitigate speeding and traffic. And we will look forward to ditches and paving in our next meeting. Okay. Do any of the trustees have anything to report?
Not at this time.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the assessor's office.
Okay, I'm gonna give the assessor's report today. It's very brief. Basically, we're about a week to 2 weeks away at the most for closing our books and turning them into the county. So then the assessments will probably be one of the first townships to have the assessments sent out, which is usually in the beginning of August, somewhere in the beginning.
Okay,
That's
thank
all.
you. Okay, and now, before we move on to the business portions of the meetings, I have asked the attorney to provide a brief report to the trustees regarding this, his firm, their history with the township, and the township's legal expenses since their appointment back in 2022. So, Counselor?
Thank you, Supervisor. Forgive me, my wife got me sick, so I have a bit of a frog in my throat, but I'll try to speak without drinking my full 2 bottles of water. So my name is Mark Kimsey. I'm a partner at Erdo Werwas in Chicago. We are a law firm of now 16, which is the biggest we've ever been. And we are primarily a litigation firm. We all fancy ourselves litigators. Some of us litigate more than others these days. And we've kind of developed a transactional practice, a local government practice over the past 5 to 10 years. My partner, Michael Erdo, is a former trustee and mayor of the village of Bartlett. And I'm a former auxiliary police officer from Tinley Park. And I have an MPA as well, so kind of a history of kind of involvement with public entities. So that's where our, I guess, interest or growing practice area in local government comes from. We now represent, as of yesterday, 9 townships and several other local government entities, mostly in the Chicago metropolitan area. And we have represented Shields Township now since June of 2022, and I'll kind of get into the story about how that happened right now. So we were retained in June of 2022. Really, we were contacted in May of 2022. That's one. And as has been well documented in public comment over a number of meetings, the total legal spend from the township to my firm since our appointment, which was in June 22, which was fiscal year 23, right? So I'll be talking about fiscal years, not to confuse anybody. The township's fiscal year runs from March to the end of February. So the total legal spend during that time is $320,000, a little over actually, so a whopping number. And these fees are driven by extraordinary, right, not routine circumstances. They were in costs that were incurred to defend the township and restore compliance in kind of a crisis situation when we stepped in, and also implementing kind of reforms. So the summary of the legal fees by fiscal year. So for fiscal year 23, it was $97,000. For fiscal year 24, it was $95,000. And for fiscal year 2025, it was $128,000. For again, a total of just over $320,000. And to provide a little more description about what those drivers of those costs were, right? So back in 2022, there was what I would in no shy way describe as kind of a collapse in governance at the township, with some resignations, which I'll talk about, destruction of records, right, on the way out with some of those resignees. And then there was litigation where a trustee sued the township, an outgoing trustee sued the township. There's been a tax objection lawsuit that was recently resolved. There's been a number of frivolous PAC, public access counselor, and FOIA complaints, along with crisis, which I'll talk about with the fire protection districts that the township appoints the trustees to. And then most recently has been described earlier this evening, the electoral board litigation last winter. So going all the way back to what I call kind of a collapse with the former, the original board that was elected in 2021. So between May and June of 2022, the supervisor, the township supervisor, the assessor, the then township attorney, and 3 of 4 of the office employees resigned all at once. And as I said, there was a number of physical electronic records that we learned later were destroyed. And essentially the township was left functionally unable to operate. So the year prior, the township had consolidated the road district, right, with the township. So the township's now responsible for the road district. The assessor's gone, right? So the board essentially is responsible for all the major functions of the township. And it has no employees except for one who had a pending sexual harassment complaint against a former trustee. There was also a pending public access counselor review at that time, along with a complaint filed with the Attorney General's office. So that's what we walked into in June of 2022. No supervisor, no assessor, no employees, and a township that was literally leaking water from the roof. So that's what we stepped into at very first with Supervisor Jeff Urso was appointed the deputy township supervisor at first, and then subsequently appointed the full-time replacement supervisor. So shortly after we, I want to say, got our arms around those issues, but we did our best. The trustee against whom that the sexual harassment claim was made turned around and filed a lawsuit, and she sued the employee who had made the claim along with the former supervisor, and also named the township, right? And so the township was sued. So again, as a reactive measure, we had to defend the township, but not only did the township have to defend itself, it was required under state law to defend and hire separate attorneys for each of the employee and the supervisor. So the spend is going up, up, up. And luckily, that case was dismissed on the township's motion in February of 2023. And it subsequently, we settled the case and avoided any sort of appeals or anything like that in July of 2023 for essentially no cash, right?
Wait,
No cash settlement.
Did the case settle or was it dismissed?
So the case was dismissed and then it was settled afterward.
So why settle a dismissed case?
Because they can file an appeal.
Oh, okay, never mind. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so the idea was the township could continue to pay me. I would have been very happy if the case didn't settle, right? And to litigate the appeal, but essentially we were able to negotiate a settlement to settle that case for $0 and to discontinue essentially the spending, so to speak. And as part of that settlement, well, as a result of, I don't want to say as part of it wasn't a term, but that trustee resigned. So the total legal fees for that litigation, at least for our firm alone, were about $60,000, and that's about $60,000. So bringing us to kind of the next issue, I try to put these in temporal order a little bit, but bear with me. So we started getting FOIA requests. I say we, the royal we at the township, a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests, and so I would say between fiscal year 23 and 25, the deputy clerk estimates there's been about 3 to 7 FOIA requests per month, and has reviewed literally, and my office maybe even tens of thousands of pages of documents. And notably, this wasn't the case at first. It began shortly after the township hired Dan Rogers, and it was primarily, these were filed by Ms. Blahanka and Ms. Snowbrick. And for example, the fiscal year 25, so from 24 in March to 25 the end of February, legal costs related to these FOIA requests was $22,000. Similarly related to that, around that same time, the township began to receive public access counselor complaints. So the Public Access Counselor Division of the Attorney General, and they enforce FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, and OMA, the Open Meetings Act. And so when a FOIA request is denied or there's an allegation that the Open Meetings Act is violated, you can file a request for review or a complaint with the Public Access Counselor, the PAC, the PAC. And so the first one of those happened in June of 23, so fiscal year 24. And it essentially had alleged a failure to post proper notice for the June 8th board meeting for that year. The township had fully complied with those posting requirements, and so we were forced to respond to the complaint and submit a brief and submit evidence and an affidavit from the deputy clerk. And after we did that, Ms. Blahanka withdrew that request for review. The second one was later that year in November of 2023, and that one, complaint related to a FOIA request related to documents spanning well over 20 years. And essentially the township, with the issue there, as I had said, is when the administration or the individuals had resigned, there was records, right? When we came in, there was records that were missing. And so we responded and we said, hey, the township responded and said, hey, we don't have these records don't exist. And Ms. Blahanka filed a request for review, which again, we were forced to brief and submit affidavits on, and ultimately in April of 2024, the Public Access Counselor again denied that request and found that there was no violation. I want to note that both of these claims, both of these requests for review were based on really misinterpretations of well-settled law, and the township was forced to expend public funds to write written briefs and put things together that were kind of black letter law that Ms. Blahanka disagreed with. Separately, to take a little break from Ms. Blahanka, I'm sorry, I want to talk about a tax objection lawsuit. So there's been a tax objection suit that's been going on since we inherited essentially, and so as you'll learn at the training, there is these tax objection lawsuits. There's lawyers out there. Forgive me if there's any plaintiffs' lawyers or those related to plaintiffs' lawyers here, but they have a cottage industry where they'll go around and they sue on behalf of taxpayers, right? Class actions, and they say, oh, there's you accumulated too much in your fund, and we think you shouldn't be taxing, so you should return this money. So the taxpayers get cents back, and the attorneys get tens or thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars back. And that case was, as I said, we inherited it. I believe it was for tax year 2020, excuse me. So we defended that case, and separately we worked with the accountant and the administrator in talking about how to budget better and talk about capital funds and accumulations to avoid those kind of lawsuits in the future. And we're happy to report, I believe, last month or the month before, that case was dismissed. So finally, after several years, those take a long time. They're certainly Shield was not the only entity that was sued as part of that. So, but it was, Shields was dismissed from the lawsuit. Another issue is in fiscal year 25, and so this is in, I believe, April of last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the township learned that there was a 30-year lapse in the appointment of the 2 fire protection districts, the trustees for those districts. So the township is responsible for appointing the trustees, the boards for independent fire protection districts that are within the township. And it had come to the attention of the supervisor that these fire protection districts were struggling financially, and essentially the county said, well, hey, this is your responsibility, township. And so we had to figure out if there was only one, I believe one of the boards had only one member that was left, and the other one, had not been appointed in 30 years. So luckily the statutes kind of account for that, and they say that you hold office until your successor is appointed and qualified, right? But obviously that wasn't the intent of the statute, that people hang around for 30 years. So as those of you who are at the
No, I just thought, I'm coughing too. You got too close.
Mr. Clerk.
Sick.
So as for those of you who were at the April board meeting, you'll know that those appointments are now made every year. So they're staggered terms, so every year that township should be making those appointments. How it fell off, we don't know, but we've gotten that kind of back on track and did some, at least work with the boards, those new trustees, to talk about, potential options for them in terms of their financial solvency, their tax levies, and potential consolidation of those sort of issues.
Counselor, before you go on, may I ask a couple questions?
Yes,
Just
please.
on this particular case here with the, is this referring to the Rockland Road Fire District or Rockland Fire District or whatever? What is this referring to?
This is Arden Shores North and Arden Shores South.
Okay, so this doesn't refer to what the old fire station?
No, no,
whatever
correct.
with that. Did that group represent Arden Shores, or did they not when they were in position? Dan Rogers was on that.
So that was
board,
a
along with Rum and so forth.
No, that was a separate.
That was a separate.
My understanding, trustee, and forgive me if I'm wrong.
No, it's
I
quite
can-
right, I'm looking for clarity.
But they
myself.
have separate, so they're separate districts. So as I maybe, have repeating myself here, but over these meetings, Illinois has the most units of local government of any other, state by over double, right? So 8,000, where Pennsylvania has like 3,500.
1400.
Well, it depends on how.
How you want to split
1400.
up.
Yeah, well, what's a local government?
Yeah.
And so these fire protection districts, right, I mean,
Yes.
not everybody's in a fire protection district.
Yes.
But they're, well, you may probably know this, right, they're outside of municipalities. Some municipalities they overlap with municipalities. But so Arden Shores North and South had separate districts, had separate governing boards that were.
So that's what we're referring to here, because we obviously had a board that was representing Rockland that was inside of Shields Township at one time.
Correct, and then there was also Arden Shores North and Arden Shores South,
And they have a separate board.
2 separate boards, right, that's
Okay,
separately
I'm
existed.
only trying to educate
No,
myself.
I understand it, it's
I'm on
crazy.
the fly here.
So there's, right, so there was, at that point, I guess 3, I mean, I think there's still other fire protection districts, maybe within the township's territorial limits, I'm not sure. But Arden Shores North, Arden Shores South were totally separate and had totally separate governing bodies. Also are wholly within Shields Township. So the reason why that's relevant, right, is because there's fire protection districts that overlap townships, and then the county appoints them. So those that are wholly within the township appoints.
I see.
So where are they being consolidated? Because I see there's a note here that there's a potential consolidation review.
Right, so there was a number of, I mean, so this was,
I'm sure. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, go ahead.
So there was I believe it was, I don't wanna say maybe Evergreen Park, somewhere down south, where they dealt with this kind of issue of a fire protection district that went bankrupt, and nobody wants it, right? So why would someone wanna take on an obligation, right, where there's really no, I mean, they're gonna get a very small tax levy, because a lot of these districts are very small. And so what happens is, you can't not have fire service somewhere, so someone's gonna be on the hook for it, and typically that falls on the county, right, or sometimes the township. And so the idea was, instead of to have, the tax burden for those specific individuals swallowing the entire township, to, see if they can consolidate or come up with an IGA right, with, or improve their current IGAs with some of the surrounding municipalities. So they could have consolidated together, right, they could have consolidated with other adjoining, fire protection districts.
So are you talking about Arden North and Arden South consolidating together, or? you-
Correct.
Okay.
And there's a number of options that they have.
And who's providing fire services to those?
So currently, I could not speak to who is currently doing it, but I believe they had, my understanding last was that they, one has an IGA with Lake Forest.
The
I believe.
village of Lake Bluff provides, fire
Lake Bluff,
service to them.
for both?
And
Yes.
they have for years, and they have a contract, they have a new contract with them.
Okay.
And they're very satisfied with that because it costs them far less
Yeah.
than it does for the people in the Knollwood because of the decision made by, I just wanna, I won't even mention names, but you know who it was. So anyhow, let's remember that one.
So the
I
idea
think
is
we need to get on with this.
So we were approached, you know, by the individuals who were the remaining trustees on this board, and essentially said, hey, we have no money. So that's why this occurred, and the county sent them to us, because the township's the appointing.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
Thanks. So, next is, so as has been much discussed tonight, the electoral board proceedings. So in November of '24, Ms. Blanco filed defective nominating petitions on behalf of a slate of candidates. So those petitions, they omitted address information, they lacked statements of economic interest, and they included a candidate who was ineligible because he lived outside the township. These objections were filed by a private attorney, right, on behalf of a resident who has been identified as Dan Rogers, who was also a township employee, but he did it in his private capacity, he hired his own attorney. And so the township has a legal obligation to convene an electoral board when there is an objection filed, so.
I understand he did this on behalf of himself, but isn't that technically engaging in political action, right?
You don't lose your political rights because you work for a government.
I do believe at some point in time there's a conflict of interest that's raised here, and that's certainly identified in the ethics handbook, is that no employee can engage in political activity. I believe that's what I read.
On township time, right, on township time.
Well,
But
I'm
you
not
don't
sure
lose
that I read that, but.
Well, you don't lose your political rights because you work for a government, right? I mean, there's clear case law. So, so the township has a legal obligation to conduct, an electoral board, to establish an electoral board. So that happens in municipalities and counties, right? There's these electoral boards that are formed, and the statute talks about how they're formed. And so in this case, it was a complicated forming of this board for a number of reasons. So the board was formed, so Supervisor Jefferson at the time recused himself, although he was not running for office because the current supervisor was running for office. And the two most senior trustees also recused themselves. So the board was ultimately constituted after kind of a pinball match of the clerk, who is a statutory member of that body, and then the third most trustee, who did not run for office, and then a public member. So what happens when you run out of people who can participate on these boards? You get a public member. Each county court has a different process for appointing them. So we wrote a letter to the Lake County, the chief judge of Lake County, and we said, hey, will you please, send us over a public member? And they did, and it was, in fact, a fairly recently retired judge and a former municipal attorney, which was very handy for us, and was appointed by the chief judge and sent over to us. So, as part of that, there was, so in short, once the board was formed, it was a hotly litigated proceeding. So there was motion practice. A lot of the times we don't see that in these cases. So Ms. Blahanka's attorney filed a motion to dismiss, and the opposing counsel also filed a similar motion, right? And after that, so what happens? The board ruled and said, hey, no, these are factual issues, right? And so usually what happens at these hearings is, instead of having, a meeting where you hear motions, you come in and you just have the hearing. And so the board said, hey, we need to know the facts, determine what those are. And so there was a full evidentiary hearing that was ultimately held. And what happened is that board unanimously sustained all of the objections. Well, not all of the objections, there were certain objections that were rejected about, properly filling out the statement of candidacy. But essentially, all the objections were sustained the objections were sustained as to all candidates. And the legal fees for that proceeding was $39,000, a little over $39,500. So after that, so let me talk a little bit about the findings in that case, right? So the findings, the unanimous findings, including a retired judge from Lake County, were one that one of the candidates was ineligible, right, based on his residency. And another one is that Ms. Plahonka intentionally omitted address information from her petitions. And the third one was that those petitions were circulated at Lake Bluff Caucus Group, right, which misled voters or had the potential for misleading voters. So that's the findings of the electoral board in this case. And after that, Ms. Plahonka also chose to appeal. So once the electoral board process is done, it's like an administrative hearing. So there's an administrative hearing. Once that's resolved, there's a time period to file an appeal, because obviously these things are time sensitive, right? Eventually there's going to be an election, and what happens a lot of the time is, the issue will be moot, as they say, by the end, and because the election has happened. So it moved quickly, so as part of that, right, we were required to assist the township in putting together the record on appeal, as they speak, right? So when you're an attorney and you litigate in a circuit court, what you have to do is put that record together. The attorneys have to put it together for the parties and submit it to the court, right? In this case, the township has a statutory obligation to do that.
I know you're in a rhythm and a pattern, I'm not trying to break that, but with Kathy's thing, it says it is intentional. Was that something that was found by this board, or with this judge and with this temporary thing?
Correct.
And they came up with that accusation, or did that actually become a
formal finding by the board?
Okay, I'm looking for
right, and upheld by the board on appeal.
Okay, there's a lot of information going, and I'm just trying to make sure.
And don't feel sorry for, I do better when you throw me,
Well,
answering questions.
for me, this is helpful, because obviously we have residents involved in this, and we want to be respectful. And when we're dropping certain things that is intentional,
Sure.
that's a very.
I put it in quotes in my, because that was a specific finding. Right?
Yeah.
And it was found that she did it intentionally. And I will say, it wasn't, the board didn't go so far as to say there was an intention to.
With malice.
Right, with an intention to mislead, but that she intentionally omitted information from the petitions.
Okay.
And then she went, and then.
Could that have been by error and then submitted, but we wouldn't know?
She gave a number of reasons. She testified to a number of reasons, none of which the board found credible.
Okay, I'm just asking.
No,
I mean, this is all stuff that's happened before I got on the board,
Sure,
so
understood.
I'm trying to get myself ahead of it.
Understood. And then there was an oral argument before a judge in Lake County, the Lake County Circuit Court, and following that oral argument, the appeal was dismissed, right? So the board's ruling was upheld. So, and the legal fees for that appeal were another $46,000, right? So for that proceeding, were another $46,000.
So what was the role in
I'm sorry?
Erdo for that appeal?
Right, so was to represent the board in its decision, like any other administrative appeal, right? So I say it's like in the Administrative Proceedings Act, where a body renders a decision, whether it's the Department of Public Health or the Public Access Council or whomever, when they go to court, right, they participate on behalf of the body.
Which board, the electoral board or
Correct.
the township?
The electoral, well, the
Because
electoral
they're
board.
different, right? Are
well,
they different?
The electoral board is a board of the township.
Right, but don't their interests at some point in time diverge?
The interests of the
township, right, which really should.
No, not in this case.
Okay. I tend to disagree, but that's okay.
Go ahead, ask what?
No, my point is though that the township is gonna have people running for election that are gonna fill the township, right? So the township should be very clear about, making sure that it doesn't get involved in defending against, and if you're gonna be the decision maker about who's gonna run for office, perhaps you should have separated out the legal representation to say, okay, you handle the board for, you continue to handle township business, right, and attorney B, you go ahead and handle the legal issues involving just the election itself, to make sure that there's no cross-contamination between the two.
Well, I don't understand what kind of cross-contamination, the town, there's no formal conflict of interest. And I mean, it's a board of the township, right? And so just like any other board of the township could have conflicts, right? Like when there was a road district here, or now that there's committees, those committees could have conflicts. And in those cases, when there's a formal legal conflict, they are entitled to hire their own attorneys. But there's gotta be a
But
capital
I
C.
think she's asking that there was a separate board to make these decisions.
But it was part of the township, is my point.
But,
It was part of the township board. I mean, it was like,
Here-
the
here-
Shields Township
It's not
officers.
like
were-
that.
and here's why it gets shady, right? And I'm not throwing shade at Camilla, I think everything that Camilla Urso has done has been above board, but her husband is the former supervisor, she is the current supervisor and was running for election. The township board is gonna make a determination of who's gonna be the next, right, supervisor by, in a sense, by making a determination of whether a particular slate can move forward or not.
They ran
That's
an
not
election.
correct. That's not
They-
correct.
We ran an election.
That's not correct.
I
That's not correct.
I don't see how that's.
Well, that's factually correct. The statute provides, right, for the township laws, the Shields
We're
Township
not
laws.
talking about whether the board, the electoral board can function, we're talking about who should be the attorney, whether those attorney roles should have been split for them.
Right, and it's a regular practice. I mean, we represent the township, it's part of the township. I don't know of any proceeding where, the local government's attorney didn't also represent the electoral board. I mean, that's a normal practice. And the board appointed us, right? So
The-
unanimously and separately, there was no formal legal conflict.
And who sat on the board that appointed?
A trustee, who didn't run against, your slate of candidates, and, the clerk.
We didn't
who
have a slate
have
of candidates, but
You did at one point.
Who sat on the
May I answer your
board?
question, please?
Go, please
So,
go ahead.
and the clerk also sat on the board, and a retired Lake County judge, who formerly practiced as a local government attorney, all did those things unanimously. So to answer your question.
That all sound, what, the
The
former,
Shields Township,
the
the
Shields
Shields Township
Township
officers
board?
electoral board.
Or,
correct.
okay, the Teal Shop.
Shields Township officers electoral board, correct.
And so at the time that you're representing the electoral board, you're also representing the township?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no conflict between those parties or between our representation.
Again, I disagree, I see a potential conflict there.
Well, you're certainly, I'm not gonna
Okay.
argue with them. I'm happy to talk to you outside of open session as well, but I mean, there's case law, right? I mean, it's not a capital C conflict.
No, it's a little C conflict,
Well, that depends on your perspective.
it does.
So, I can't imagine. So, the, electoral board, so here's the kind of the high level summary of this, right? So we had these FOIA requests, that had come in, these PAC filings that were frivolous, and, rejected, these electoral board proceedings, and in each case, the township was vindicated, right, at every step, that the township was not lost. The PAC complaints were denied, and the electoral board, ruling was upheld. So not only was there a Lake County judge that was involved, with the, board itself, who voted unanimously, but a sitting Lake County judge heard arguments, and upheld the ruling. And so, I get emphatic a little bit, only because, I'm personally accused of, unethical conduct, right? And so, I don't know how much more we could be vindicated, on these matters. So that's why, I'm speaking emphatic. But to move back to the fiscal year 24-25 summary, right, we have the trustee litigation, and then these electoral board, proceedings kind of matters, they drove these costs up. In 24 or in 25, right, without those issues, without the FOIA requests and without the electoral board matters, the township's legal fees would have been 3 to 4% of the budget, right, which is normal, which is low normal. So it's those costs that drove up the fees.
Counselor, I mean, it might be somewhat semantics to a certain degree, but don't you think that when you say it's frivolous, after we just said that we had a sexual lawsuit brought up against the thing, to have the board quit and whatever, that you had to come and fix everything and so forth?
Not that one, trustee, I misspoke. That was a typo in your
Okay.
presentation.
Okay,
I'm at the PAC complaint. complaints.
I apologize.
No,
Okay,
that
but
litigation-
But I am trying to say that there's a right when you see it, people quitting, sexual harassment, whatever, you wanna get some FOIA.
I'm not making any
People have a
sort of-
right to do that.
People absolutely do.
Yeah,
People
and
absolutely do, and.
Again, I'm not trying to make this personal, Counselor, because it's not personal to me, it's just that I wanna just make sure that I'm representing all the people who voted for me, people who did vote for me, should know that I'm speaking for them in general, so I wanted to get clarity on that. That's
No,
all.
of course,
Thank
and
you.
it's a typo in the presentation.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I will make no comment on the sexual harassment allegation and those sorts of, yeah, it was I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to talk about those.
So it's quite right,
outside
I
of
wanted
the
clarity, I appreciate your time.
And then, so kind of, I'll try to lead this out a little bit on kind of a good thing, right? So in addition to all those terrible things that happened that we were kind of forced to react to, right, and defend, there was, a number of good things that we've done for the township, especially kind of considering the state that we came into. It really is a tribute to the board that brought us in, and the work that they did. So they did lots of intergovernmental agreements for shared services, right? So you lose employees. What do? They partner with other townships in the area to provide services, to increase services, right? I mean, I think in this, it's no secret, talking about Waukegan Township, right? And really they have kind of state-of-the-art facilities. They win awards for their senior center programming in their senior center. And, the contract that was executed between the township, or the supervisor, I should say, is the supervisor of general assistance, and Waukegan Township provides the Shields Township residents access to those services. Outsourced the assessor, right, and as I said, the general assistance functions, updated the human resources policies. We did talk about, as I said, capital funding, right, so we could avoid these tax objections in the future. Established a volunteer advisory committee model. We did a number of trainings, developed training materials, did a permitting ordinance, which essentially shifts costs, right, onto entities that are looking to, get permits for the township's right of ways. And what do I mean by that, right? So they have to pay for the legal costs, right? The cost of legal review, they have to pay for the cost of the engineering reviews, so that doesn't fall on the taxpayer, which was not the case before. And also, we've encouraged the township and the staff to get involved in professional associations, right? So that we don't have to kind of do everything, right? And so they can learn and become kind of experts on some of these things themselves. And certainly one of the trainings that is coming up next Saturday is one of those events that is being put on by NPA, but it is free. So, and I just note, right, that the township's finances are audited by state statute. They're independently audited every year. And it's transparent, right? You can go and look, you can get the audit reports, they're posted on the township's website. So all the financial information is posted, and I mean, it demonstrates that all of the financial practices of the township are aligned with best practices and Illinois law. And with that, I'm certainly happy to answer any more questions for the board.
45 minutes.
Counselor, I just thought, I think, and I'm referring to the whole board at the same time, this is a lot. I really would have, I mean, this has obviously been brewing, this has been something that's put together, I think, really,
Yeah.
well, thank you, do very nice work there. But I personally, just as a new trustee, I need stuff like this, not when I come to sit with the desk. I need to be able to review this and look at these things long before, and all of us are brand new. So I want to be respectful of that, that we're all trying to kind of learn on the fly here. But this is something that I can't just suddenly vote on after I literally am just digesting it for the first time, and I have no idea.
Well, I'm not asking you to vote on anything. The supervisor contacted me and asked me to give a report on this, given the public comments.
It's very thorough, it's very good, but without any back history and so forth. I am not as much as saying a complaint as I am saying a concern. That I'm just like, wow, I need to know this stuff a little bit before
before. And maybe, and this is something I could, may appeal to the other trustees and so forth, maybe that's something that's really important for us to be able to discuss. You know, something like that, like this is coming up and these are some of the things, here's the backstory of what's going on, because I have none of this.
Sure, well, I understand, and I mean, I'm not telling you to vote anyway, I can't do that, I don't
No,
get a vote,
but
but I think that this was discussed at the last meeting, and it was, I mean, it wasn't like, this
Well-
was, everybody's known this was coming for a month, so.
Aren't you available, Mark, to have a phone call or take a phone call as well, so?
Absolutely, or I could come up, I'd be happy to come and meet,
I mean,
you know, early.
I called Mark myself,
Did you?
so, yeah, so,
Did you get a response?
I just had a whole conversation with Mark.
Cause I
Why
called
was-
and left a message and I never got a reply.
You called me?
I did.
Oh, I did not know.
I called your
My
office
direct line?
your office downtown and left a voicemail message on your office downtown and I never got a reply.
Well, I very much apologize for that. You can always, I'll give you my, call my cell phone, or send me an email.
It's on your card, but, you know, like, I called and I asked several very specific questions, and I never got a reply, so that's, it bothered me.
I apologize very much, I did not know that.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, Counselor. That's over with. And then, next is the approval of bills.
No, he's gonna provide a report about the training seminar.
Oh, would you like me to do that? We've been talking more.
You can finish that in 2 sentences, just to describe what it is.
So, yeah, so
and what's
very
going on.
briefly, MTA is the Metropolitan Township Association, so it's different than TOI, which is the Township Officials of Illinois. It's an organization kind of specifically for Illinois, or for metropolitan area townships, right, that are a little bit different than those downstate, where they kind of focus more on roads and things like that, so kind of the more urban townships, if you will. We've been working with MTA to provide trainings for townships in the metropolitan area for a number of years. So it'll be Saturday morning at Hanover Township, and we'll be given my partner Michael and I will be given the training. I think it's about 3.5 hours, so if you haven't had enough of me talking tonight,
Yes.
you can come, and we'll be kind of doing a number of kind of some more salacious, issues, FOIA, auditors, First Amendment auditors, things like that, but kind of some of the basics for trustees on finances, and OMA and FOIA and those issues as well. It's free of charge for the trustees. So I would invite you to come. I know the supervisor and trustee, Oliver Salbello will be there. And if enough of you are gonna attend, we can try to set up kind of a tour of Hanover Township's campus, their main campus, I should say. They have an emergency services station there. They have the town hall, they have a senior center that's kind of state-of-the-art, their facilities, and they have 2 reserves, kind of parks, kind of like a nature preserve where you can walk around and exercise, not that I do that, but.
And then in the email was sent, so we sent 2 links to this one and the one coming in November as well, so if you guys would like to join that. And then, that's it, right? Okay. So for the approval of bills, the next item on the agenda, and then, Madam Clerk, we have 3 sets of bills for the board's consideration. Please take us through the payroll bills for the road district, general assistance, and town fund.
Okay, for the town fund expenses, we have a total of $66,181.32. There is no GA, fund total, it's at 0, and then the road and bridge expenses are a total of $4,050.03. And the grand total of the, expenses would be $70,231.35.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to approve payment of the payroll and bills for the road district, general assistance, and town fund as presented?
I'm approving the bills, that's fine, but I don't exactly know what I'm approving. I mean, I don't know what we did on roads, and I don't know what we're
It's
doing.
all in, isn't it?
If you'd like to look at any bills that are here on the desk.
But I just got this list
You-
24 hours ago.
Right.
And I've had 2 funerals. So I think that I need to have this kind of information, again, something like this a lot quicker. I know that we're all brand new and whatever, but this would have been really helpful.
Generally, it's done 48 hours before, and that's common practice. Am I correct on that, Mark? And part of the reason is
48 to 72, right? I
72.
think there's like a window.
but a lot of times it's dependent on all the information that we need to compile it before we can send it out.
And a lot of it's moving, it's a moving target, I get it, because it's coming up to the meeting and so forth, I understand, and I'm not saying that with accusation, I'm just saying that, again, I'm brand new, and I just feel like that's something I have to air as representing the people that voted for me, and so I wanna be informed as much as I can, so thank you for, entertaining my concern.
Go ahead. Did anybody else have a question? I had a question about $825 for lug valve stems. Can you say more about that?
When you have specific questions like that, it's probably best that you contact our office and ask specifically. I don't have every bill in front of me and what it's for. A valve stem would be tires though.
So wait, I get this like a day and a half or 2 days before
Right.
the meeting, and I'm supposed to review it and immediately call you up so that we can discuss this. That's a really, really short window going back to.
Is that a common practice? for
Yeah,
that?
and so the idea is like it's about, does the line item match up with the invoice, right? Is there an invoice in there? It's not whether you approve of the purchase itself, it's on it, right?
Look,
The former trustees would come in
$825
throughout the month.
for valve stems just seems expensive to me, so I kinda want clarification on the purchase. Now, whether that comes after,
And then, yeah, what I would do is, I would meet with Carl afterward, and I'm sure he'd be happy to provide whatever.
okay.
But again,
So
it's
I'm
not
making a note
approving
of
the
that.
purchase,
Can we
it's
make another
approving.
note of the $1,504 for a computer monitor, cause I think there was one on the prior to last month's bill as well about computer monitor, and I just wanna make, and when I think about, are they being replaced, is this rent, like, are we paying for computer services, like renting equipment, like,
What was the
additional-
first one that you had a question about, the $825 you said for the?
Yeah, lug valve
Okay,
stems.
I just wanna make sure I read it, thank you.
Yeah, LUG. And then the second one, and the line item number on the valve stems was 21218. And then for the computer monitor, 21210.
It's not just a monitor, it's a whole system.
Okay, but it says here, computer monitor.
Well, I'm
Computer
sorry
slash
about that. I didn't write the
comma,
bill up, but-
Office 365, so, like, learning more about what's embedded in that would be very helpful if we're going to put our names on approving something.
Yeah, and we could talk about that, we could get a meeting going with the accountants up if you have specific questions. You just have to keep going. So is there a motion to approve payment for the payroll bills and the road district general assistance and town fund as present?
I so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion is made by trustee Parnell, seconded by Swarthout. Is there any discussion? I think that was there already. Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Swarthout? Trustee Prager?
Aye.
Supervisor Russo?
Aye.
Trustee Parnell?
Aye.
Trustee Oliver Saville?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Payment of bills is approved as present. Okay, the next item on the agenda is old business. So the first item on the old business is appointment of the Township Attorney. As the board meeting last month, I reported that I appointed Erdo Werwas as the Township Attorney. Copy of the agreement for attorney services in Erdo Werwas LLC was provided to the board in advance of the meeting. I'm seeking a motion to consent to the appointment and present and to authorize the supervisor and clerk respectively to sign and attest the agreement for attorney services on behalf of the township. Is there such a motion?
I so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by trustee Parnell and seconded by trustee Swarthout. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I had, spoken last month about, the total amounts that the supervisor can go ahead and spend and ask for an amendment to the language.
Oh,
That's a separate line,
Policies.
that's on there, but we haven't gotten to it
Yeah.
yet.
That's the next item.
I understand, but that's different than my point. My point is I had asked the attorney to go ahead and prepare a draft of that language. Has that been done?
No, it is not the supervisor, and I discussed that, she did not.
Okay, and then you saw no reason to go ahead and notify me of that? Ask.
I did not.
Okay, so, understood.
Okay, the motion carries and the attorney is appointed.
No, you gotta get a
No,
vote.
now we have to have a roll call.
Again?
No, you get, that was a motion in a second. Any more discussion?
Oh, any more discussion?
I think my vote's gonna be clear on this because of the lack of communication. I just don't feel that, I can trust you at this point.
Okay. Anyone else? So is there a motion?
You got a motion? You gotta get a vote. Get a vote. Call the
A
roll.
roll call.
Oh, all right, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Trustee Swarthout?
Aye.
Trustee Prager?
Deny.
Supervisor Urso?
Okay.
Trustee Parnell?
Aye.
Trustee Oliver Sevilla?
Nay.
Okay, the motion carries and the attorney is appointed. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, the second item of old business is the approval of township policies. The policy regarding purchasing of goods and services is the only policy that remains outstanding following the meeting last month. Copies of the policy were provided to the board members again in advance of the meeting. Is there a motion to approve the policy as present?
I so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so the motion is made by trustee Parnell and seconded by trustee Swarthout. Any discussion? No?
I was
Right.
unable to review it, and so I wanna make it public record that I just didn't have the opportunity to review. So I'm having to vote without actually looking it over. And so it is not with disrespect to the board or anything else, but I don't feel like I can just say yes to something I wasn't able to vote.
Yep, of course.
It was the same policy that was.
It was the same,
presented
oh, it was the same,
Same.
because we
You tabled
talked
it.
about that, we didn't change it, we tabled it.
Yes.
So this is a policy that has the language that provides the supervisor the authority to spend up to $30,000 without board approval. Do I have that correct? Without any changes or modification?
That's correct. The same one presented last.
Right.
So we discussed that last time, and I just feel that that's an absorbent amount of money, that if we had to make an emergency, we could do that. You're allowed to call and talk to three of us, and we could, we could be able to vote in that.
No, you can't call the three of you.
You can call one.
separate. You can call one, right?
You can call one, and the other one has to be present.
It's in the policy of pre-approved expenditures as emergencies.
It just as an
Yeah,
emergency.
you're allowed
Yeah,
to
it's an
spend money
emergency.
for an
But
emergency.
Wouldn't it be good if we had a situation where if we did something like that, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, Kamala, but if you had to do that you would have to answer to the board, by the next meeting, saying, hey, I ended up having to enact
Yes,
this. and I
correct.
st-
Like
and
the
I
road
stayed-
close,
And I stayed, that I
yes.
had to pay this.
Correct.
So that we would know
Very-
exactly what's
yes.
going on.
Yes.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, the bills are available, right, so you could come in any day and review what's on file. I mean, you have as trustees a right to that information any day that the
Yeah.
meeting's open. And I'll say, I'll just kind of briefly, the policy that was adopted last month on the expenditures, right, that does approve emergency, but that's for disbursement of the funds, not for making the purchase in the first place, right? So that's the difference between that policy and this policy.
So if I will, that this is something it's referring to, something that's catastrophe as opposed to a severe one, or something.
Right, I mean, I think ultimately it's gonna be up to the board to determine
What that might be.
whether Camilla did a good job or not, and to withdraw the authority if they don't think she did.
Okay, thank you.
I believe we discussed last month, at any point in time, we can take it away at the next meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate that, I do remember that, thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Swarthout?
Aye.
Trustee Prager?
Aye.
Supervisor Urso?
Aye.
Trustee Parnell?
Aye.
Trustee Sevilla?
Nay.
Oliver Sevilla?
Aye, sorry. Motion carries and the policy is hereby approved as present. All right, next one, new business. Next item on the agenda is new business. The first item of new business is the rescheduled, meeting minutes of May 19, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as present?
I did get a chance to review them, and, I feel that I need to, make a statement and a confession, to the board, because, I ended up having a situation at the phone before I got on the board, where I was visited by Dan Rogers at my home, unannounced and uninvited. And he wanted to speak to me about a lot of the things that were going on in Shields Township coming up on the first meeting. I wasn't even sworn in yet, and I felt very uncomfortable with the conversation. In our conversation, this is a he said, you said type of situation. He told me that he did not get 3 bids for the pickup truck. And then all the things that were going on in my personal life, with my sister-in-law and very ill health and has since passed, and along with now my friend that's passed, I forgot about this conversation that I had. So in that, I wanted to be totally forthright and honest with the board that he had had this discussion with me, and we were discussing this, in my opinion and in my perspective. I said, well, why don't we look at possibly doing a piggyback quote with county? Do this with the fire department, the police departments do this. They tend to have multiple communities get together, and that doesn't always work because you usually get packages. It doesn't always work, and so, if you will, that was roughly on a Wednesday. I then had I believe that next Monday was the day that we were up. I wasn't able to go, but up at Lake County to recount my vote for my position. And then we then a few days later had our first meeting. And so with that, I would just like to make sure that we got 2 other quotes, just to make sure that my conscience is clear. You know, only because I know we did it and we voted, it's water under the bridge, but to a certain degree, I feel like I want to be totally transparent. And we had that discussion, and Dan Rogers may actually, and I'm not trying to deface or defame, but he's not here to represent himself. And I'm not trying to, like I said, deface or defame, but I just remember the conversation.
We did get bids on the truck.
Yeah, so there was, so I don't know whether there was 3 or not, but it's relevant. So what was required in that case? And in fact, I talked to Dan beforehand, right, and I said, you have to put this out for bid. So what they did is they published the bid in the newspaper, like an advertisement in the
So they
newspaper.
didn't have to get 3. They
Right,
just
how many ever people responded, right, it's a public process, so you applied, and how many ever bids they got, I don't know.
And this is a special bid because it's a fleet bid, it's not, we're just not
No,
going
it
to a
wasn't,
gift.
that's why.
Well, right, but
We talked about whether it was a fleet bid or not, and I said, no, I don't, you're gonna have to go through the regular process with this, and he did.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, and I am not trying, again, I'm just trying to be forthright with the conversation I had with Dan Rogers coming to my
Yeah,
home.
no, that's fine,
discussing
we're
this
happy to
with
hear what you have to say.
And I just wanted to make sure that that is out there, because in all the newness and everything else, and trying to take a class on the computer and everything else, I kind of forgot all that conversation.
Oh, we appreciate you,
And so I
Kyle.
feel that, that had to be shared, just because I didn't feel comfortable with that, so, thank you.
Let you on the roads. Really helps us all. So is there a motion to approve the minutes as present?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Who was it?
A motion is made by trustee Salvia and second by trustee, let's say, Prager, right? Yeah, it's a tie, Prager.
I'll flip a coin for
Yeah.
it.
I heard that, right.
I was thinking.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Swarthout.
Aye.
Trustee Prager.
Aye.
Supervisor Urso.
Aye.
Trustee Carnell. Trustee Oliver Sabella.
Aye.
All right, the motion carries, and the rescheduled meeting minutes of May 19th, 2025 are approved as present. All right, is there any reason to adjourn to executive session?
You wanna go on?
No, I don't. Hearing none, I will close this portion of the meeting. All right, is there any other business that any member of this board wishes to bring forward?
We talked on the phone about starting the road commission and whatever, have we set any dates, or do you know of anything that you've been?
We were hoping for maybe next Wednesday,
Okay.
or maybe Thursday, but I think Wednesday would work, or
And when,
Thursday.
if that's the case, it would Wednesday during the day or Wednesday in the afternoon?
I would say afternoon, because everybody works during the day, is that okay?
That's far better for me on a Wednesday in the afternoon.
Okay, perfect, then we'll do that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
anyone else? Okay, hearing none, is a motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
All right, is there a second?
Aye.
All right, the motion is made by trustee Cornell, second by trustee Prager. Alright, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And ayes have it, and we are adjourned at 6:11. Thank you. Yeah.